We're ready here. I'm Leslie Rogalski, the creative director for the Beadsmith. And today we are going to record for you step by step how to make the chandelier earrings as promised. Remember again that this is a recording. Our future workshops will always be recorded for you to find on your on our YouTube channel. So for now, let's get started. Here's the tutorial, the downloadable tutorial for you when you register and sign up on I Love Beads for our classes. Today, the chandelier earrings are featuring a new finish that we absolutely love, the iris finish. Of course, they can be made with any of your favorite colors. Let me see if I can get this here to be spotlight. There we go. Okay, so I have all 5 colorways of the iris beads, jet green iris, and you can see that they come in the shiny, this amazing iridescent finish, and they also come in a matte finish that also has an iridescence. Subtle, there we go, nice and close. So we have the green iris, the brown iris, rainbow iris, blue iris, and red iris. And they come in 4 shapes: gem duos, ginkgos, Paisley duos, and super duos. And I have made samples in all the colorways just to show you if you bring them all together. These are all the jet red in the matte. The blue, I've used the shiny and the matte together. And I'm going to mention this over and over today as I work through the step outs, how cool it is when you can have the matte and the shiny together. And this is one of the ways that Team Leslie Pope, my partner in crime at the Beadsmith, we love to do this. So you can see that I've played not only the shaped beads in matte and shiny against each other to show each other off, but also the seed beads that are in this project. So this I've chosen just to use the rainbow iris in the gem duos and the ginkgos. And I've chosen another color paisley, a polychrome berry with galvanized seed beads to really show off the shapes and echo the shapes. Here we have the brown iris. This is all brown iris with shiny and matte together. And the jet green iris, I used all shiny, except for the ginkgos, I used the matte. And I was playing the galvanized dark lilac color 11s with a beautiful chartreuse translucent size 8. I'm turning around, my cat is banging at the door. All right, so there's your family of iris beads. Let me get started with the step-by-step. See if I can bring this in. There we go. Okay. I start with, you're going to need for each pair of earrings, ginkgos, gem duos, Paisley duos, size 8 seed beads, size 11 seed beads, 2 closed jump rings, whoops, stuck to my finger, and a pair of ear wires. The closed jump rings are the best way to add a place to attach a clasp or an ear wire without the danger of the thread coming through the opening. So there's no opening in a closed jump ring, and you sew it on and there's no chance that it's going to escape. So that's one of my favorite little tricks and tips to do.
I think that was the best, one of the first and best tips you gave me, Leslie.
Was it?
Yeah, yeah.
I try to pay it forward, you know, things that are shared with me and also things that I just discover on my own. But that's absolutely true. Those little, these happen to be 4mm closed jump rings. They may be called soldered jump rings. And I have them in every possible metal color I can find to go with my ear wires. And these are just the little fish hook ear wires. They're very easy to get on and off. So in this workshop today, we're going to use the Green Iris Shiny Ginkgos and Gem Duos. And I've chosen this beautiful chalk green luster Paisley Duo so I can contrast the light and the dark colors. And I'm using a matte size 11 seed bead. These are these new frosted, glazed, opaque seed beads in all these different colors. This is Peacock. And then just a nice Ceylon size 8, a nice pearly. I just happen to love green and pearl together. I'm using a size 10 needle. The smallest bead here is only a size 11, so you can really use needles from as thin as size 12, 11, and then 10 being a little bit larger. Whatever works for you to be able to string your thread easily. A 1.25 yards, give or take, of 5 of fire line. I'm using 6-pound fire line, and I'm using black, which really does hide in this piece. But if you feel that you can see the black thread too much, for me doing the demo, it works because you can see the thread as I'm doing it. But if you'd like, you can find another thread that may be a lighter color. Wildfire has a really nice kind of mossy green color that might blend in when you use lighter colors. So, all right, are we ready to get started? Here we go. The first thing we're going to do is make the inner circle of Gem Duos with size 8s. And you want to always remember when you're working with 2-hole beads to check both holes. So I do this when I pick them up. Leslie's nodding. Yes, because there's nothing worse than getting halfway through a piece and reaching those open holes of something you've already sewn in and finding that they're blocked. And there will be blockages. There's just mutants in every little tube.
You only let that happen to you once, and then you're like, yep, I'm checking every hole all the time.
That's right. It's absolutely true. Hopefully it's a lesson you only learn once. So I'm going to take my 6 Gem Duos, and Gem Duos have an upside and a downside. The underneath part is flat. Let's see if I can show you here on this. You can see the gold, matte gold has kind of a faceted top and totally flat on the bottom. So that's how you know the top and bottom. So when you string these into your ring, you want to make sure that you're stringing them with the top facing up. So I string a Gem Duo and an 8. And when I pick up my beads to check for those other holes, you can probably see this even on camera. You can see that you can see through the hole. So that's all I do. So Gem Duo and an 8. Gem Duo, give a look through the hole, pick up an 8. We're going to do this 6 times. I'm also making sure that the beads that I'm picking up are well formed. Sometimes, where's that one I just sort of discarded? One of them had kind of a little stubby end. I didn't like the way it looked. You can see there. You know, glass, there's a lot of handmade aspects to making our glass beads. So sometimes that happens. So I'm up to, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to pick up
a couple of mutants here and there. Not a lot.
Always. Yep. Not a big deal. I'm going to pick up my 6th one, make sure that that's going to face all in the right proper direction.
And you know that Gem Duos are one of my favorite 2-hole beads anyway.
You know, they're really easy and intuitive to use because they're symmetrical and they fit into a lot, right?
Yeah.
So here's 6. I need one more. Size 8. Oh, I caught on the edge of my mat. That's all right. Lost a bead. I'm going to pick that up again. Here's my 8. And my gem duo. Now you can string a stopper bead on your tail so that doesn't happen to you. I wrap mine around my finger and I'm going to sew through the beads again to make a ring. And I just like laying it out on the mat like this so I can go through and make sure I don't skip a bead.
You know, I never do that. I'm going to have to try to do that. That's probably better than the way I do it.
I like to lay it down and work it through that way. And then I just kind of flip it over to make sure that I haven't missed any of the beads. I'm holding onto my tail still so I don't pull that through. But like I said, you can string a stopper bead there and you're going to want to leave just enough of a tail to weave in. So I'm pulling this into a ring. Whip that out. Here's my ring of 6 gem duos and 6/8, and I'm going to tie my tail to my working thread. I'm going to make 3 hitches. So it makes a square knot and an extra hitch to hold it. 1, 2, make sure that that knot stays in the right place between your beads. 1 more hitch. Okay, now we can weave our tail in. Take your needle, here's my thread, my needle stringing tip, another one I love to pay forward. To make your needle, to make it easy to string your thread. Take a pliers and squash flat the end of the thread because the needle has a slot in it, so you want this to be flat to fit in. And you're going to bring the eye of the needle to the thread and you're going to keep your thread like, see how small that is, like a poppy seed? And you're going to bring the eye of the needle right down to the thread and it has no place to go. It almost always, I'd say 95% of the time, I get it on the first try.
Same. It's called needle to thread, not thread to needle.
That's right, needle to thread. And now you're going to sew away from the knot through the beads. You don't have to go all the way around the circle, but at least 2 sets of the 8 and the gem duo to make sure that's woven in. And then you can take your scissors and, which of course I just lost, there they are. And I'm going to snip this and put that aside. Now notice that your thread, your working thread is coming out at the knot. You also want to weave away from the knot a little bit before you start the rest of a piece. So I'm just going to sew through 1 8 and 1 gem duo. And you always want to pull your thread straight out of the bead hole so it doesn't abrade. And then we're going to reverse direction. So I was going around the circle this way. Now I'm going to reverse direction and go through that open outer hole of the gem duo I just exited. And I'm ready for the next round where we add the Paisley Duos. This round, you pick up an 11. Paisley Duos have 2 sides. They have a concave side and they have a convex side. So the concave side goes in and the convex side goes out. They also have a tip hole and a wide end hole. So I'm picking up an 11, size 11 seed bead, and then I'm going to string 1 Paisley Duo through the concave tip and 1 Paisley Duo through the convex tip, another 11, sewing through the next open gem duo hole. So they fit together back to back. And I'm going to repeat this to add these pairs of seed beads and Paisley Duos between each gem duo. And you're going to be checking, remember, when you pick it up, check to make sure both holes are clear. So size 11, concave tip, convex tip, check the hole. Yep, and size 11. And it doesn't matter which way around the circle you choose to go as long as you are consistent, whatever works for you. Whether you're right-handed or left-handed may make a difference, how you hold it. Whoop, pick up another 11. So we're gonna do this for the 6 sets.
I tell people they look like elephant ears when you string them that way.
Yeah, they do. They do look like elephant ears. They remind me of fleur-de-lis too. So, you know, that kind of shape. Checking my bead holes, picking up my second 11, going through the gem duo. Make sure you don't get caught on anything either. It's kind of a long piece of thread, but you can do it with the one single piece of thread. So concave tip, convex tip. Now these Paisleys are the same on both sides. There are some that might have a finish on one side and nothing on the other. So you want to pay attention when you do string your beads. These chalk luster beads are the same on both sides. Look how cool that looks. I do like these colors, green and pearl together.
All well, right. You know, I'm a green gal, so.
You are a green gal. The green team. And we're both wearing black today, but
yeah.
All right, this is the last one. So now we're coming around. We have our last pair of seed beads and Paisleys picked up. And we're gonna sew through all the beads. We're gonna sew through that next gem duo open hole, and we're gonna sew around all the way around again to firm up the piece. There's a lot of designs that suggest that you sew through things twice. It really does make a difference so that the piece, the piece that you're making is not going to be floppy. So as I'm stringing through it, I'm making sure that I'm going through all the beads. And you don't have to do a lot at one time. So I'm coming out the gem duo now. I'm pulling my thread straight through the hole, like I said. I also will use my finger to hold the thread coming out straight in case I can't actually pull my thread all the way from where I'm holding it. Just like a little tool, a little fulcrum. Isn't that what that's called? Like the middle of a seesaw, like you're using something to pull it at an angle. I don't know.
I'm not gonna answer to that one. I don't know.
I'm not sure that fulcrum is the right geometric term, but if anybody watching this video can tell me what that is when I'm doing this and I'm holding the thread. Keeps getting caught on my bead mat, sorry. Okay, so I'm sure I'm not all the way around, but I'm going to pretend I'm all the way around, and you want to exit through a pair of Paisley Duos in between where the convex sides are, like this. And the reason you're doing this is because we're going to reverse direction now. We've been sewing around like this. We're going to reverse direction this way. And by putting the thread along the arched convex side, it's going to lie very snug against the side of that Paisley Duo. Whereas if we were reversing direction on the inside, the thread, because there's an inner arch, the thread would show more. So that's the logic for why we chose this turn place, and we're going to reverse direction. And this is actually now the bottom of the earring. So I want to take a minute and show you here on the tutorial illustration. This is where we are. Here's the beadwork, here's the illustration. So we've come around outside the convex side of the bottom Paisley Duo. You can see on the illustration, nice and clear. Now we get to add the ginkgos around the side, which is really fun. It really starts to take shape. So the first thing we're going to do is add size 8s. This takes a couple rounds, this earring, so you don't do all of the outside stuff at once. So we're going to add an 8 between the next two Paisley Duos. And another 8. And then an 11. And this is a good example of how designers need to really play with the beads in order to determine that you don't put 8s all the way around, which might be your intuition. In order to make it lie flat, we play what size, how many between each bead in order to figure out what's going to work best. So in this, we have an 8, an 8, and 11. Now we're going to take a Paisley Duo, which sits right in there. Stay on screen this. And we're going to, the Paisley Duo also has different sides that you can sew through, like the ginkgo, like the Paisley Duo. Right. So there's the tip side where it comes narrow and the holes go this way. So you have the tip side or the wide side. And your instructions will tell you sew through the tip end or sew through the wide end. And that's how you know. This, for this round, we're going to sew through the tip end and bring your ginkgo down. Now we're going to pick up 3 11s and add them across the top of the ginkgo and sew into the wide end.
You know, I had that same discussion with the class I was teaching over the weekend about how you decide which beads you stick in between things. And it's like, it's trial and error. Yeah, trial and error, yes.
That's right. So string the ginkgo through the tip end, string 3 11s, sew back through the wide end of the ginkgo and through the next Paisley. And you're going to pull that through so the ginkgo sits. Look how that fits.
Perfect.
Cool. Yeah, they were designed to work together, or as we say, to play well together, right?
Yes. And we always want our beads to play well together.
That's right. So we're up here on the earring. This is where we just added. We're going to add the top one and the other side one. Now the top one has a little bit of difference. First, we're going to sew an 8 between the two Paisleys to get between those elephant ears, right? Now we're going to string a Paisley. Remember to check your holes. And the top of the top ginkgo, sorry, not Paisley, the top ginkgo is going to have an 11, an 8, and an 11 instead of the 3 11s. And we're going to sew back into the wide end through the Paisley Duo. Sit nice and snug there. Now we're going to repeat around the side. There's an 8 on this side. There's going to be an 8 on the other side. Pick up an 8, sew through the next Paisley. I'm trying to hold this so you guys can see better in the video, of course. It's always a little more challenging because otherwise you'd be picking it up and turning it different ways. Now we're going to add the Paisley on the other side with the 3 11s.
Ginkgo.
Ginkgos.
I keep doing that. I do that. You know, I do that all the time. I say Gym Duo instead of Super Duo.
We're in the ginkgo round now. We're in the ginkgo round. Wowie. All right. Thank you, Leslie.
No, I do that all the time.
I know. So we strung a ginkgo through a tip end. We're stringing 3 11s. We're going to sew in the wide end of the ginkgo and then through the Paisley. Make sure it's not twisted. There we go. All right, so the ginkgo's nice and settled. Now we have an 11, an 8, and an 8 to add. So I'm gonna pick this up and turn it so it's a little easier for me, accessible. So I have picked up an 11 and I'm sewing through the next Paisley. Ha, I got that right. Now we're gonna string an 8 and sew through the Paisley and another 8. And so through the next paisley, and we're back at the bottom of the earring where we're going to add another ginkgo with an 11, an 8, and an 11. I hear you laughing at me.
I'm sorry. I can't help it. I can't help
That's
it.
what friends do. All right. So we check to make sure both holes are clear. We're going to sew through a tip end. String an 11, an 8, and an 11. And this just adds, this is going to allow us to add these little actually flat right angle weave units at the top and bottom for a little extra embellishment. So we have an 11, an 8, and 11. We're going to sew in the wide end of the ginkgo. And we're going to sew through all the beads to come out the first ginkgo that we added. So I've gone through the paisley, the 8, the paisley, the 8. I'm going to go through the paisley, the 11, and the paisley, and out through the ginkgo, but not through any of those beads yet. I want to make sure that you're in the right place here. Now we're going to reverse direction. So we're going to actually reverse direction through this end 11 right here. So you can see I'm going back the other way. And I'm going to pick up an 8 and sew into the ginkgo. And that's going to help me to start to come back down and add the little side seed beads. So you're kind of working around and back and forth in this project. I'm going back through the wide end of the ginkgo. And that just kind of hangs there, and that's fine. We'll be beading into it later on. Sew through the paisley and come out of the 11. This 11 that you put between these two paisleys. And you may have to bend the piece a little bit to access the holes, and that's okay. You'll see me do that where I'm bending the bead away so I can see where the hole is. Coming out the 11. Pull your thread through. Now we're going to pick up these side beads. We're going to pick up 5 11s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And sew through the 8, the paisley, and the 8. These beads are going to loop around the paisley. So I'm going to sew through the 8, the paisley, and the 8. Then my piece so I have access. Whoops, did I miss one? I think I only
looks like you missed one. Yeah.
I only picked up 4. So here's what you do. Don't sew back through the piece. Take your needle off your thread. Pull your thread back and restring your needle. If you sew back into your beadwork, you run the risk of knotting around another thread, and then it's just a mess. Okay, I did only pick up 4. 5. 5, you're going to pick up 5 size 11s. Go through the 8, the paisley, and the 8. There we go. And they just arch nicely around the paisley. Now we're going to pick up 7 11s, which make the arch down here. Now, depending on which seed beads you're using, they may be a little thicker or even thinner than the ones that I'm using. And if you think that 7 is too many, take one off and try 6 and see if that works better for you. I'm using 7 and the tutorial says 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sew through the 11 and the 8 at the bottom like that. And we're going to add the little dangle, right angle weave. Pick up, excuse me, 3/8. So you're coming out of your 8, going in this direction, and we're going to circle around and go through it again to add the 3 11s into that nice little unit. We're going to sew through it again to keep it nice and firm. So through the 3 you just added and the one that was already there, and go through the other 11 as well. So after you, when you sew through it again, you're going to be coming out like that. Now we're going to mirror the other side. Pick up 7 11s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we're going to sew through the 8, the paisley, and the 8. And make the other arch. Again, I'm folding the piece to access, to be able to get my needle through. There's that nice bottom. Woohoo. Now we have 5 11s to string, and we're going to sew through the 11, the paisley, and this ginkgo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. String them down and sew through the 11, and we're going to come out this ginkgo. So this is going to arch the beads, the 5 beads that we just picked up around that paisley. There we go. And I still have to come out through the ginkgo. Don't go through any of those 11s yet. Now to match, we'll pick up an 8 and sew through all 3 of the seed beads. You can see that I flip my piece back and forth a lot in order to get easy access, but I want you to see now we're symmetrical. Okay, now we're going to be sewing up and adding the side beads. I call these the little epaulets, and then adding the earring, and we're almost done. So we're going to pick up another 8, 4 11s, and sew through the 8 and the paisley and come out the ginkgo.
I don't think you picked up 4 11s though, Leslie.
Wow, you have good eyes. I so need new glasses.
Eagle eye here, and I'm watching you on a big screen, so.
Yeah, that's true. All right, an 8. So we came all the way up. We strung an 8. We went through the 11s, strung an 8, 4 11s, and we're going to sew through the 8, the paisley, and the ginkgo to come out the top. We're going to add at the top another right angle unit. There we go. When you come out the ginkgo at the top, sew through an 11 and an 8 like we did at the bottom. Get in there. Okay. So we're coming out the 8. Pick up 3 8s, and we're coming out this way. So we're going to circle around and sew through in the same direction to make that unit at the top of 4 8s. And you can see that right there. Let's sew through those again. We want this to be really firm. So you're going to sew through all 4 8s again. And continue up through 2 more 8s to exit out the top size 8. And here's where we add the closed jump ring for the ear wire. I'm picking up the jump ring, and you can see that I'm coming out to the left of that top 8. So we're going to circle around and sew through the 8 again, and I'm going to do that twice. I'm going to attach the jump ring nice and snug to the top. Sew through the jump ring again. And sew through the top 8 again. So there's our twice. Now we want to sew through the beadwork to come out on the other side. So I'm going to continue around in the direction that I'm sewing, down through the 8 on what is my left side, through the 8 that was already there, and exit through the 11, which is just what we did at the bottom. Now you have your top. Continue down through the wide end ginkgo, and the Paisley Duo and the 8, and exit the 8. Okay, pick up 4 size 11s, 1, 2, 3, 4, and an 8, because you see we have an 8 on either side of these 3 11s here. So we want to add another 8 before we sew through all 3 11s that we added earlier and the 8. Now we're really finished. The last thing you do is to secure your thread in the beadwork and trim. And here's how I do that. I weave the thread back into the piece and I make a half hitch around existing threads in a couple places where the thread is already existing. So I'm going to sew through the wide end of the ginkgo and come out where my first hitch is going to be, between the ginkgo and the paisley. And you want to look for places to put these secure hitches where they're not going to be seen. You want them to be inconspicuous. So I'm making hitches around threads between some of the larger beads because you won't see that little hitch. And the way I do that is simply to come up from bottom to top so I know that my thread, my working thread, is wrapping around the thread that's already sewing through there. And I'm going to pull it in a little bit and then sew through the loop that I'm making. And I'm pulling that snug. And all this is meant to hold your tail before you trim it from coming out of your beadwork. I'm going to continue through the Paisley Duo. Again, bending the work, trying to find that hole. There we go. And I'm going to sew through the Paisley Duo. Now, I'm going to sew through the 11 into the Paisley Duo. I'm not going to go around the loop. I want to get between those other Paisley Duos down at the bottom. So I'm going to pull that through. Now, on between, oops, I want to sew through the size 8 and the other Paisley Duo first. Now I'm going to make another hitch because I have the larger size 8 next to the larger Paisley. And you can see where I come up around the existing, there's a thread that runs this way. So I'm going to come up around that thread and it makes a little loop, and I'm going to make sure that my thread is between the size 8 and the Paisley, and I'm going to sew through that loop and pull that little hitch, and then continue just to weave the tail in through a couple beads. I'm choosing again to go through the bigger beads and not the seed beads, and I really can just leave it there coming out of the Paisley. And voila, the last and final thing. Of course, you could make this a pendant if you wanted, but as a pair of earrings, I have my little fish hook. I pull that easily, just open enough with my thumb. And I go through the closed jump ring, bring my earring around into the hook, close it, done. Ta-da! All right, now, since this is recorded with a very small studio audience, if you have questions as you're watching this on our YouTube channel. Let's come back to us. There we go. Hi. So if you have questions as you're watching this, please go to our I Love Beads page, and there's a link there, but you can email us at classes@beadsmith.com. It's a special mailbox just for our classes. So that's classes@beadsmith.com, and we will look through any questions that you have. If you're able to, when you watch the recording, you will probably see a timeline. So you can actually say to us at 2 minutes and 37 seconds, you did this thing. Can you explain that? Or I got lost when I reached this step. So you will have the tutorial, and you can also refer to that as well. You can say in step 3 where you say X, I found it was easier to do something else. We love to hear your suggestions, and we'd love to see what you make. There are so many variations of colors and things that you can do. I'm actually wearing a pair of earrings that shows the gleam finish, which are like this translucent marble. Can't even begin to describe them, but let's
marble's probably good.
Again.
Yeah.
Here.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, right. So you can see these finishes. I should be able to get this a little bigger. There you go. So this is one of the crystal gleam colors. Here's another with a copper gleam. And again, take notice, playing off the matte against the shiny. We've got Gleam Gem Duos, Gleam Paisley Duos, Gleam Ginkgos, I think we have. Here this is another one that has the gleam. So there's so many variations that you can do. It's something we want to see. We want to see when you make your own things.
Please send us pictures.
Yes.
We will post them on, yeah.
Or in the Beadsmith Inspiration Squad Facebook page, you can post your pictures there and mention that these are the chandelier earrings, and then there's the Zoom workshop recorded for you on our YouTube channel. So I'm Leslie Rogalski, with great appreciative thanks to Leslie Pope, Beadsmith Senior Designer, for helping me through this, and can't wait to do another one. Everybody still stay safe. We're almost through it. You can find these beads and other quality Beadsmith beads, tools, and supplies from your favorite bead reseller. Let's give these guys a boost. Bye.
Bye.